I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I had a really great reading month again in September. I don't know what is going on with this year. I feel like I'm just waiting for 1 month to read terrible books or to read books that I don't love. And it hasn't been happening. I keep reading books that I'm really loving. I'm just trying to soak in all the great reads that I am reading this year. So the first book that I read in September was Dreamwork by Mary Oliver. This collection felt unbelievably resonant and personal, as if Mary Oliver was revealing the secrets of her past and the inner workings of her heart. Reading her poetry feels like such a gift, and I will cherish each and every one of her words forever. Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile the world goes on. Meanwhile the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clear blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. I am once again going to sound like a broken record when I say that Mary Oliver is my favorite poet. I just feel more and more connected to her and more close to her every poem I read, every collection I read, and she's just such an incredibly special poet. And what I love about her work is how approachable it is. I always say that Mary Oliver is everybody's poet because she writes about such universal themes, even though a lot of her poems center around nature and wildlife and the environment and dogs, which I will get into soon, but she talks about the world in a way that is so universal, and the love that she shares for the world, the love that she shares for life. Her poems are so approachable and easy to latch onto and connect to, and I think anybody can get something out of her work and her words, and she's just such a special writer. So this was an absolute joy to read, definitely more personal, intimate, heartbreaking, and bittersweet at times. A lot of her work is very hopeful and optimistic and admiring the beauty of the world, like I said, but these poems reflected a little bit on her past. She had a very complicated past with her family and especially her father, so those poems are very interesting to read because she doesn't really give the reader much glimpse into the harder aspects of her life, which I really appreciated, kind of getting that intimate glimpse, and it almost felt like she was revealing something to a close friend. You know, when you're friends with someone, you know, if you haven't been friends for a very long time, you're not going to tell them your deepest secrets or your deepest insecurities, but once you get to know someone more and more, you reveal more of yourself and you become more vulnerable with that person. And I feel like that's what Mary Oliver has been doing, or how my reading experience of her work has been going. I feel like she's revealing more of herself to me the more that I read, and it's such a special reading experience. So I cannot praise Mary Oliver's work enough, and I highly recommend you check out her poems because of all the things I just said. The next book that I read in September was such a pleasant, beautiful, vivid, gorgeous surprise, and that is Light by Eva Figes. Reading this novel felt like watching Eva Figes paint a master copy of Claude Monet's garden paintings, except she used words instead of pigments to create her piece of art. Light takes place on a single day and begins before the sun rises. Claude Monet awakens early and walks out into his lush garden to paint the pre-dawn light of Giverny. As the sun moves through the sky, the reader moves along with it. Although Claude Monet, like the sun itself, is the center of the story's universe, we also hear the thoughts and feelings of the family, friends, and household staff who orbit around him. Each of them perceive Claude Monet, his artwork, their connection to him, and their place in the household universe differently. The story closes as the day closes, with the setting of the sun and the disappearance of light. It was fascinating to see Claude Monet, my very favorite painter, in this intimate way. This story reminded me that the great bodies of work we all admire, whether it's art, music, writing, etc., have human beings behind them. Those people have/had a family, friends, likes and dislikes, as well as thoughts, feelings, and a spirit of their own. My favorite element of this story was how Eva Figes made light and shadow feel like additional and unexpected characters. As an artist and oil painter myself, I loved how this core artistic philosophy, the importance of light and shadow in the painting process, was explored. This poetic and vivid novel is, like all of Monet's paintings, a breathtaking work of art. I bought this book on a whim. The last time I was in England, I visited Bath and my husband and I went to Topping, and I saw this book and I was immediately taken in by the cover because I love Claude Monet, and I was intrigued because I'd never seen this cover before, I'd never seen this book before, I'd never heard anything about it, and I don't often buy books without knowing a little something or without maybe hearing about it from someone somewhere on the internet or in my personal life. And it was so wonderful to buy a book on a whim and be intrigued by the blurb and the concept and the cover and just immediately read it. Most of the time when I buy books, I know something about it, someone has recommended it to me, I've heard a lot about it, or it's just popular, but it was just such a pleasant surprise. It was so wonderful to have that reading experience, and I loved the concept of this book. It reminded me a little bit of Mrs. Dalloway, because by Virginia Woolf. Mrs. Dalloway takes place over one day, and we follow the main character, Mrs. Dalloway, on this one day, and it reminded me a bit of that same structure, but we're following Claude Monet and Giverny, and it's a reflection on him and, his family and friends and just the world of his garden, which I really loved. It really felt like his garden was its own little universe, and I loved this. If you love Claude Monet, if you are interested in artistic novels, this book was so poetic and descriptive, the writing was so gorgeous and enchanting, and it really felt like reading a painting. It felt like watching a painting come to life, and I could spend every day in Claude Monet's garden. So spending time in this book was an absolute treat, and I can't recommend it enough. It was just so beautiful. The next book that I read in September was an audiobook, and that was Raising Hare by Chloe Dalton. The connection we humans share with animals is something I've always been very passionate about. I believe we have endless things to learn from the creatures that live among us, and we have a very special role in their lives as well. We have a responsibility to uphold, and that responsibility is to protect and respect these animals and the lands they inhabit. Chloe Dalton is a perfect example of the kind of person the natural world needs. In February 2021, Dalton stumbled upon a newborn hare, a leveret, that had been chased by a dog. Fearing for its life, she brought it home, only to discover how difficult it is to raise a wild hare, most of whom perish in captivity from either shock or starvation. Through trial and error, she learns to feed and care for the leveret with every intention of returning it to the wilderness. Instead, it became her constant companion, wandering the fields and woods at night, and returning to Dalton's house by day. Though Dalton feared that the hare would be preyed upon by foxes, weasels, feral cats, raptors, or even people, she never tried to restrict it to the house. Each time the hare left, Chloe knew she may never see it again. Yet she also understood that to confine it would be its own kind of death. I admire Chloe Dalton's kind heart and willingness to listen and tend to the hare's needs. She respected the hare, and the hare respected her. That is the truth of life and nature. Mutual respect and love is what we all deserve. Thank you, Chloe Dalton, for sharing your and Hare's story with the world. It was an honor and a joy to read. Or I should say listen to, because I did listen to the audiobook. I can't express how much I loved this book. Like I said in the beginning of my review, I really love the connection between humans and animals. I have always been an animal person since I was a very little kid. I had like a million pets growing up. I was always the kid asking my parents for different pets and animals, and I could spend hours and hours just looking at the snails on the beach and looking at the minnows swimming in the water and admiring swans and different birds, and I loved watching our bird bath. Anyway, I'm such an animal person, and so I really love nonfiction about people and nature, but especially people and animals. I was also obsessed with National Geographic as a kid and watching animal documentaries, but I just love learning about different animals, learning about animal behaviors, but also learning about animal behaviors and thus learning about human behaviors and learning about humanity, and because I think they're very closely linked. And I'm very passionate about caring for the planet, caring for the environment, and like I said in my review, respecting the animals that we live among and giving them the best home that we can in caring for our planet and thus caring for ourselves. But this was just so wonderful because Chloe Dalton she did the hard thing, which I feel I've always been very connected to animals. Like I want to make everything my pet and I want to care for it and I want to love it and I want to name it. Chloe Dalton never named the hare. She always called it the hare or the leveret, and she respected its boundaries. And of course, because hares need that respected boundary, because they're not like rabbits or bunnies that can be domesticated. And it was just, that's another thing that I really loved about listening to this audiobook, is I learned so much about hares, because the only thing I really knew about hares was that it was like a cousin to a rabbit or a bunny, and also The Tortoise and the Hare. That was one of my favorite books when I was little, and I didn't know much about hares, so it was a joy to learn more about hares. It was very eye-opening in a lot of ways, where Chloe Dalton talked about the environment that a hare should be in, the way that hares should be cared for, and it was just, it's a very specific story because it's about Chloe Dalton and her experience caring for this hare, but it had such a universality to it, and I loved it. I really want to own a copy of it now. I would love to physically read it, and this is a story that I think we can just learn so much from. And I loved it. I really, really loved it. The next book that I read in September was for my book club, the Well-Read Book Club, which I host on Fable. If you want to join, there's a link in the description. Every month we read from a different genre, and in September we read nonfiction, and the nonfiction everybody chose to read was The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. This is, unsurprisingly, one of the most powerful books I've ever had the pleasure to read. The way James Baldwin structured these two letters was brilliant. The first letter, written to his nephew, also named James, felt intimate and personal, which made me feel honored to read it. He wrote about race, brotherhood, family, and his own personal experiences with such honesty and strength, yet his words felt poetic and soft as well. I pictured him embracing his nephew, literally and metaphorically, trying to protect and prepare young James for the reality and brutality of the world. The second letter was equally profound and important. No amount of words or praise will ever do it justice. Once I finished reading, I took several days to reflect on primarily American history, Baldwin's life, and his lasting legacy. Like many of my other favorite authors, it warms my heart to see that although James Baldwin is no longer alive, his words are living on. I was reminded of the saying, "The pen is mightier than the sword." It is books like this one, and authors like Baldwin, who prove this to be true. This has joined the list of books I think are required reading for every human being. I truly believe that no amount of praise will ever do this book justice because it's so powerful and important. And what I love about James Baldwin is the way that he speaks, the way that he writes. It's so poetic and lyrical, but also packs an incredible punch, is very honest and true, and he doesn't sugarcoat anything, and he speaks with such honesty and beauty, and I really admire that. The way that he broached these very important and sometimes difficult topics was beautiful, and I don't know how to... every time I try and think about this book or talk about it, I feel like anything I say will never do it justice. I really love how the first letter opens, so I thought I would read it to you. Dear James, I have begun this letter 5 times and torn it up 5 times. I keep seeing your face, which is also the face of your father and my brother. Like him, you are tough, dark, vulnerable, moody, with a very definite tendency to sound truculent because you want no one to think you are soft. You may be like your grandfather in this, I don't know, but certainly both you and your father resemble him very much physically. Well, he is dead. He never saw you, and he had a terrible life. He was defeated long before he died because, at the bottom of his heart, he really believed what white people said about him. I could keep going on, but I would then end up reading the whole book because it's just so beautiful. I cannot recommend this enough. Like I said in my review, it is definitely required reading for everyone. And the last book that I read in September, I closed out the month on an incredible note, and that is Dog Songs by Mary Oliver. I once again read another Mary Oliver. I read 2 in 1 month because I simply cannot get enough, and this might be one of my favorite collections by her. Yet another poetry collection confirming that Mary Oliver is a true kindred spirit. This collection, dedicated to dogs, specifically ones Mary Oliver has known, was heartfelt, funny, relatable, and oh so precious. Anyone whose heart has been touched by the love of a dog needs to read these poems. You will thank me, I promise. The Sweetness of Dogs by Mary Oliver. What do you say, Percy? I am thinking of sitting out on the sand to watch the moon rise. It's full tonight, so we go. And the moon rises, so beautiful it makes me shudder, makes me think about time and space, makes me take measure of myself, one iota pondering heaven. Thus we sit, myself thinking how grateful I am for the moon's perfect beauty, and also, oh, how rich it is to love the world. Percy, meanwhile, leans against me and gazes up into my face, as though I were just as wonderful as the perfect moon. If you are a dog lover, you need this collection of poems. This is one of the sweetest collections of poems I've ever read, and I will continue to reread it for the rest of my life. I have a very, like I said earlier, close connection to animals, especially dogs. My dog Willow is basically my daughter. I always call her my dogter. I love her so much. She's a Cavalier and Cocker Spaniel mix, if you're wondering. She is the sweetest thing. All she wants is to cuddle and to be loved. Literally all she wants is to lick your face and sit on your lap, and so many of these, and to run around. She loves running around and playing. But so many of these poems felt like the essence of Willow, and I loved it. Again, like I said in my review, Mary Oliver just feels like a kindred spirit. She really feels like another version of my soul, which is so wonderful and special to experience and feel, and to just be connected to someone in that way is precious. I can't say enough good things about this collection. I wish I could read you every single poem. Oh, also, this collection is actually illustrated with some truly stunning illustrations. So, yet another thing to love about this book. I am an illustrator, and naturally, being an illustrator, I really love when books are illustrated. So, these are also just gorgeous. I love drawing dogs. I love admiring drawings of dogs. It's so special, so beautiful. Anyway, those are the 5 books. I have 4 here, but I read 5. The 5 books that I read in September. I hope that maybe one of them piqued your interest and you want to add them to your TBR. I would love to know what you read in September. If you have read any of these as well, I would also love to know if you've read any of these, what you think of them. And I would love to know, again, what you read in September. I am so excited for what I'm reading in October. I am currently in the middle of... Let me get this one. I'm currently in the middle of The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. We are reading this for the Game of Tomes book club. I should have finished it by the end of September, but I am still in the middle of reading it. I am on chapter 19, which is about Beren and Luthien, and I am loving this chapter. I'm loving the story of Beren and Luthien, and I'm really loving this book. It's so wonderful to get more of the world of Tolkien and to be back in his writing. His writing is so rich, and I am really enjoying it. I'm finding it a little bit challenging keeping track of everybody because there are so many names of people, names of places, different languages, and there are multiple names for people, and the way that I find it so charming, the way that he talks about people. He's like, this person, son of this person, daughter of this person, and it's just like, wait, okay, who are we talking about? Who's their dad? Who's their mom? But I'm really enjoying it because it feels so Tolkien, and I'm just loving getting more of the history of the elves and the dwarves and Man and Morgoth and Sauron, and it's just really enhancing and enriching the story of the Lord of the Rings, and I'm really enjoying it. So I am going to finish it soon. I'm going to finish it in October, but those are the books that I finished and am currently reading in September. Anyway, without further rambling on, I could spend hours just chatting to you, but I am so grateful that you watched this video. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you very soon in another video. As always, happy reading!